478 new COVID cases in New South Wales today. Sadly, 8 more people have lost their lives.
Don't leave your house. Don't cut corners unless you absolutely have to. We just want people to stay still.
18,000 police and more ADF staff hitting the streets today, desperate to ring-fence the virus.
You can expect to see high visibility policing right across the state.
We've made a decision about a permit system for the Greater Sydney for access to the region.
A critical measure to protect vulnerable Indigenous communities in Dubbo and Walgett, today recording 35 new cases.
Every strategy takes 7 to 14 days, whether it's a police strategy or a health strategy, to see what impact that has on the COVID numbers.
Meanwhile, the ACT and Victoria have both extended their lockdowns by 2 weeks, recording 19 and 22 new cases respectively.
We are at a tipping point. I don't want us to finish up like Sydney, where it's fundamentally got away from them. They're not reopening anytime soon.
The Victorian Premier introducing tough restrictions, including the controversial curfew, permit requirements for authorised workers and the closure of playgrounds and outdoor sport facilities. Measures the government claims worked last year and are designed to send a message to rule breakers.
So you will no longer be able to remove your mask to drink a cocktail at a pop-up beer garden on a footpath as part of a pub crawl. Pubs are shut for a reason.
Parts of the NT also plunged into lockdown after a positive case transited through Canberra Airport onto Darwin after quarantining in Sydney.
When we don't know everything, we have to start by assuming the worst. Remember why we go hard and fast. It is to buy time.
University of Melbourne epidemiologist Professor Nancy Baxter has pretty much a standing booking on the show these days. Where do we start, Nancy? New South Wales, I guess. Lockdown for 8 weeks now. Things are worse than ever, to be frank. Are the new measures they've introduced now likely to make a difference?
Well, I think it's important to note that the things are worse than numbers in terms things are worse than ever in terms of the numbers, but not in terms of the rate that the epidemic is growing from a effective reproductive rate. I talked about this the last time I was on, that's how the virus spreads. So how many people one person will give it to? It's been about 1.3 for a while in this epidemic. What needs to happen in New South Wales is that needs to come under 1. So, these measures, I think, have a chance of being effective in terms of either driving the epidemic down or at least getting it to stop increasing as fast. And both of those things would be great right now. And I think both of those things are well within the grasp of New South Wales with the new measures. The problem is it's going to be increasing quite a bit before these lockdown measures take effect. So I'm not sure how high the number is going to be, but people do need to prepare themselves that it is going to get worse before it starts to get better. But I do believe that all of these measures, it will start to get better.
A tough day for Melbourne as well. Lockdown extended for another 2 weeks. Curfew brought back in. We often hear that there's no evidence that curfews work. Why would they have reintroduced the curfew?
Well, it was a very triggering day for, I think, all of us in Melbourne, very confronting. And bringing back all the measures that we had in the second wave, really brought back a lot of memories for us. And curfew was one, shutting the playgrounds, really traumatizing me of that as well. But in terms of curfew, I think what the Victorian government is facing is that what they have in place right now isn't working quite well enough. It's working in terms of things are getting under control, but it needs to be more effective, because right now they still have these mystery cases, mystery clusters popping up. And again, their effective reproduction rate is above 1. So they need to drive it down below 1 now so that they can get this outbreak under control. So what are the things they don't have in place? So the restrictions on workers and requiring permits, the playgrounds closing, and the other thing they did during the second wave was the curfews. Curfews are controversial. There's conflicting evidence. Some evidence shows they work. Some evidence show it doesn't work, or it has no effect. But I think right now what they're saying is we really need to get these numbers down, and maybe that means that we can get out of lockdown in 2 weeks instead of potentially being in lockdown for 2 months. So it's worth it to do everything, to throw everything at this, and not be like New South Wales, where they kept doing the same thing for weeks and weeks and weeks when it wasn't having the impact that they needed to have.
All right, we'll have to leave it there, but thank you so much for your time. I'm sure we'll chat to you again in the next few days, Nancy.
From expert opinions to in-depth analysis and reporting, the Project YouTube brings you the biggest stories from Australia and around the globe. Hit the subscribe button now for news delivered straight to your feed.